Dear viewer of SSBC, welcome to SSBC PowerHouse with Akuchuma Care. For some of you may have much interest in knowing the role of the National Bureau of Statistics during and after elections. Here is the time, as we are so able having the opportunity to bring the Bureau Chairperson to our studio for an informative discussion aiming at addressing all sorts of questions on the performance of the body ahead of 2024 December general elections. So, Dr. Augustino Ting Mayai is a South Sudanese demographics and development specialist with a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, that is in US. Currently a research director at the SAT Institute, a tutor at the University of Juba. Mayai is an experienced applied statistician with over 10 years of hands-on analysis of national development data. But first, I would like to illuminate on the task philosophy of the Bureau. The National Bureau of Statistics is mandated to collect, compile, analyze, and publish all official statistics that span economic, social, demographics, health and environmental occurrences, conduct census and survey. Regarding all this function, we want to know from the chair, Dr. Augustino Ting Mayai, what is working on. Just to begin with my introductory part, started with the mandate of the body. What mandate among those should you talk about?
Thank you very much for having me. Grateful to be here. Happy to highlight what the Bureau is all about and to connect it to the scheduled elections in December 2024. As you have correctly put it, the Bureau is mandated to collect, compile, analyze, and publish data materials associated with our population, covering a range of areas, the economy, demography, environment, you name it. But it also focuses on making sure that the data are generated using the natural census, which happens every 10 years. This is the one that connects directly to the scheduled elections. And so depending on your interest, I am happy to answer the questions that are associated with that. Thank you.
So you have just assumed your office recently. What are your first priority in that Bureau of Statistics and why?
Thank you once again. So I started on Tuesday last week. I was received by the office on Monday and then formally started on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, I was invited to a ministerial committee's meeting, and this is a committee related to finance of the country, and particularly looking at resources that are made available for additional programs of the government that were not budgeted for during the initial budget. And so the Bureau was one of the institutions called in to present a budget and defend it. So I went in to defend the budget for the census, which would then inform a variety of projects of the government, including these scheduled elections. Now, the Bureau is not new. It is the second oldest institution in the country, second to the RRC. It was founded in '95, long before South Sudan became autonomous, as well as assuming its independence in 2011. And so the Bureau has a lot of traction in terms of historical connections to the creation of South Sudan. So there are data that are lying around from 2004 to 2010, 2008 when we collected the census data as part of the Sudan. Now, what would be my priority moving forward? Well, number one is to make sure that the data that are lying around in the country are brought together, analyzed, and shared with the general population, because that information is useful for planning and governance purpose. That's number one. Number two is I was asked to basically respond to the need of elections. And I had prepared two things. One is the budget, and the second part of it.
So recently I did an interview with the chairperson of the National Election Commission, who has confirmed that election will take place this year, despite the fact that the election budget has not been released.
Right.
Do you think census will take place before election?
When I presented a week ago to the committee, the budget was received and it was consented to by the Ministry of Finance that they would mobilize resources for the census. Given that there is that assurance, I would still emphasize the importance of timing. Even if I was given $1 billion tomorrow, I would not produce the results of the census before December 2024. So timing is a fundamental factor in addition to the absence of resources.
Time, even if you are given $1 billion tomorrow,
Yes.
you will not because of the time frame.
That's right.
So what is your suggestion? That the election should be pushed or the census to be done after? Which is which?
So I've laid out a couple of options. As part of the meeting that I attended, I was asked to elaborate on possible options. And so I wrote that and submitted it to the ministry concerned, Cabinet Affairs. Perhaps they will present that down the road. But since this is a public space, I will speak about some of the options that are available. Number one is for the government to push the roadmap for about 3 to 6 months and give me full support in terms of resources to conduct the census. That means we would have to have our elections next year, not this year. But that also means resources are made available, and these resources are not very small. I'm looking at about $100 million for this exercise. And so you need an extension if you want the census to inform the election process. So that's option number one. Number two is for the government to go on with elections for some parts of the system. The executives, the Council of State, the commissioners, the president, in particular, the governors, anything that does not require a constituency, you can conduct those elections. But the parliamentarians, especially the geography-based representatives, would need to have a census to inform what a district or a constituency looks like. And that's what requires a census. So what this means is that you continue in December 2024, you conduct these parts of elections, and then give me resources to concurrently work alongside these elections to produce the census that would then allow us to elect the representatives of the parliament.
When you say you have given out option whether to push the roadmap,
Right.
that is if they need census to be conducted.
Right.
If I ask you, is census an option in this particular time?
So I just told you option 2 is where the census becomes
No, but as the
option.
chairperson of Bureau of Statistics,
Right.
is census an option or it's a must, something that should be done before election?
As long as you have constituencies, the census is a must.
It's a must.
Yes, you must have it.
So
because how do you determine representation in Warrap State if you don't have the census? Because it depends on the size of the population in a location.
That take
We
us,
don't know that. Right.
that take us back to your colleague,
Yeah,
the one you have replaced.
right.
There was, this roadmap has been there since, is it 2018 or way before
No,
that?
the roadmap is new.
Yes,
It's just
but
an extension of the...
an extension has always been there, here and there.
Right.
The Bureau knows that this election must take place in 2024 based on the based on the current roadmap.
Right.
Okay, if your colleague, if this one is not an option, if census is not an option, why did it take long for it to reach up to this particular time where you are asking the government to extend election in order to do census? Was it not a must to have been conducted even in 2023, 2022?
The Bureau is a technical institution. It's not a political institution. And it depends for its resources on the executive, the national executive. The national executive's programs inform what the Bureau does. Now, given the fact that the agreement was delayed, I mean, it was signed in 2018, but it was not implemented until 2020. And given the fact that there are still outstanding issues with respect to the implementation of the agreement, the executive did not take any strides in order to get the Bureau going with its projects. And as a result, until recently, when they saw that there's need for the Bureau to be engaged, we now got engaged. And so for us, when the resources are made available, our task is very clear. We undertake that task and deliver the results. But we have not been asked to do so.
Talking of the resources, you told iRadio February 8, 2024,
Right.
that the National Bureau of Statistics has not done any work associated with data collection
Right.
or analysis since 2010, right?
Right.
Citing lack of resources
That's right.
to make it working. Okay, how are you going to ensure you have the resources to carry out your duties?
Well, here's the thing. I would say the government is committed. I met with the Minister of Finance. I met with the Minister myself. And the Minister has committed to providing the resources that are needed, starting with the first two processes. And the first two processes of the census include planning and then what's called cartography. Cartography is basically an exercise where you map all the areas. The resources are located for that, and I'm told they will be available as soon as I need those resources. So I believe there is a commitment from the government to provide those resources. Now, the thing is, the executive would need to tell us, make a decision on the options that I have given. There are 4 options. I have spoken so far about 2 options. There are 2 other options. If the government decides to actually conduct the census first and make an extension to the roadmap, then those resources, I would move forward and ask for those resources. If they decide that they would do option 2, which also requires the census to be conducted for the parliamentarians, I'll move forward with the same. Now, if they go to option 3, which I have not given you, then they will not need to fund the census. And option 3 is to use the 2008 census results.
Okay. Talking of the commitment from the government where they have promised you, because you seem you have been promised that they will fund maybe the census, right?
Right.
Okay, what is your budget for this census? Answer after the break. Dear viewer of SSBC, we are taking a short break. Stay with us. Hello, dear viewer of SSBC. Welcome back after that short break. We are still here with the chairperson of the National Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Augustino Ting Mayai, who is here to tell us more about the Bureau. So before short break, Doctor has mentioned the commitment of the government towards funding the census, right? So tell us briefly, how much budget do you want for census?
So I've requested roughly $110 million.
$110 million.
$110 million. It's not a cheap exercise. It's very important. It covers the entire country. It is heavily involved. I will be hiring technicians who are statisticians, who are technology experts, you name it. It's not cheap.
I don't want you to talk on behalf of the finance, but kindly, if your budget is $110 million US dollars,
Right.
and the one for the elections is something to do with billions of dollars.
Right.
And currently we have seen the civil servants are not receiving any salaries.
True.
So how relevant are all this? Which one should be a priority now?
It's an interesting question. I will not answer the question of the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance, we all go to the Minister of Finance for our government projects. Civil servants go to get their own salaries and other dues. We come in as technical institution to get some resources to implement those exercises. A salary is definitely an important appreciation for the worker, and it should be paid. I understand the country is going through difficulties, but a political transition costs more. And so it's going to be essential for the government to prioritize this political transition, because that's another way of reducing the government, so the resources that are freed up to be given back to the civil servants. It's another way of setting the stage for development. We would produce more resources for all of us. So again, it's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of the cost that you shoulder now, what you forgo now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to reduce the work of the Bureau as well as the one for the Ministry of Finance, but up to date, we have less than 12 months to election. The Election Commission has not received the budget.
Right.
You, on the other hand, have requested for a budget for census to take place. All these have been put on table.
Right.
We're yet to get feedback.
Right.
So all of us are waiting. Okay, should you get the budget and adequate time, will the process of census be trusted?
Well, it's an interesting question. I come as a technical person. I come as a technocrat. I come from a background of academia and policy research. I would believe that I'll do a good job in making sure that the process is transparent, is done academically, and that it delivered the results that are scientific, not politically driven. That I can promise the public.
In case the government used the 208 census, the one you were saying, will that be fair enough to give us accurate results at the end of the election?
So it's a good question, but it also depends on what you would like to forgo. If the intention is to make sure that you have less conflict among political organizations that are running the agreement, then you need to have something that is more accommodating. The census accommodates because it goes back to the constituencies that were developed before the crisis happened in the country. If you don't use that, then you would have to use something that is new if the parties agree to it. So the 2008 reduces conflict related to the census issue, except in the case of new constituencies that have been added. The new election law basically tells us that there will be 332 parliamentarians plus 100 from the Council of State. Now you have 332, 166 is constituency based. And this is where you need the census in order to inform what a constituency looks like to be represented by that parliamentarian. If you use 2008, you cannot allocate the 64 that are now added to this because there's no way to determine that. Unless the government decides to redistribute 64 across party groups and across, say, women list, it's going to be difficult to actually apply 2008. But again, that's a better option on the table.
Better option. So government has a lot of options to do. So
right. And I have the fourth one too. When you're interested in it, I will let you know.
You have the fourth one.
Yes.
The fourth one definitely will come out. So it's alleged that many foreigners are getting national identification of South Sudan.
Right.
And so they become South Sudanese automatically if they secure the ID.
Mm-hmm.
So how will the data collection be trusted?
I have not understood the connection between the two, but let me emphasize this. The ID system, the identification system, is basically a mandate of the Ministry of Interior. I think the directorate is passport, immigration, and nationality.
What will be used in registration?
Now I'm getting there. I'm just guessing what you're trying to get at.
Okay.
Fourth option basically gets to that. Fourth option is looking at what's called the biometric enrollment. And biometric enrollment is to capture the citizens who are of voting age across the country. And this is the sort of subset of the population you can use for election. Now the challenge with what you are presenting is that if somebody has already been issued an ID, there's no way to turn them away. They will participate in our elections. And that's the nature of things. Unless we're talking of people who have not been issued an ID. Because once the government issues an ID, that's basically a legal guarantee that they are now citizens of this country. And so if there is such thing taking place, I mean, and you should call in the Passport and Immigration Office. The new person there came into the office the same time with me to explain what this allegation can do for the country. But I can guarantee you that if you have an ID, you can vote. Because
we have seen a scenario whereby some people are given IDs like they're national, but at the end of the day, people still come back, the same government, to question them that they're not national. So just leave it there. We will come to the department.
Okay.
Yes. So regarding last year emergency of a document showing Warabe State leading in terms of population, causing debates on social media platforms and public places.
Right.
What is the reality of that document?
So I now preside over the document. Oddly, I came out and criticized the document because I was then an academic and I was a policy person. I can tell you two things. Number one is that this document was invested in by the government and the international community. It was produced. It's sitting with us. It's going to be used as a point of departure for learning process. I do not recommend it to be used for elections or planning because it has a lot of scientific problems that I outlined in the report that I issued myself from the said institute. The government has already rejected it as the basis for elections.
So it's rejected.
The government, however, said that it could be used for planning. I recommended that it should not be used for any of that because look at it. I mean, I'm from Warab. I would like my population to grow. There's no question about that. But it is end demographic for a population to grow at a rate of 14% annually, especially during the wartime, which is odd. Common sense doesn't make any sense.
Okay, you have conducted so many workshops and you've been discussing about data.
Yeah.
And we're interested in that.
Right.
So how do you want to ensure proper acquisition of high quality statistic data?
So there are instruments in place, and if they are not there, we're going to work hard to put them in place. And the proper way to go about it is that you use scientific techniques. For example, the sampling approach. Sampling approach that we're using for the studies that are upcoming is going to be proportionate in terms of the populations that are present in different locations. That means if you're from Rumbek East, and Rumbek East has 1 million people, that number of people is going to get more representation in terms of the sample size, right? So if the sample size is 3,000, we're going to make sure that it's distributed to reflect that sort of distribution of population across the board. We're going to use the instruments that are quite universal in nature. For example, making sure that the consent is sought. If you're just collecting the data that are sample-based. If you're using the census, however, that's different. The census is a legally mandated instrument for collecting information. You are required by law to comply with somebody coming in to give you the information. We make sure that the researchers that are collecting the information are competent enough, they are well-trained in research methodology, statistics, that those who are doing the analysis have the skills necessary to be able to produce, for example, proportions or even regression analysis, which would be considered high level. And so a combination of scientific frameworks internationally, plus making sure that you have the right individuals to do the job, lead to basically quality data results. Yeah.
Okay, take you back to that document which you rejected.
Right.
So do you believe in genuine utilization of the past generated data by the government in powers, since you had already rejected that document that was circulated? So do you believe? So
it's not really, this document was produced by my predecessor, and it's not up to me to say he signed off and it's part of the documents that we have, the Bureau. What I'm giving you I have given you two parts of this. My expert opinion is that this document has a lot of problems, should not be used. I mean, even the general public recognizes that there are issues related to the document. But if the government elects, based on the recommendation of my previous colleague, previous chair, then I would comply, because I mean, the government invested resources in it. But I would still maintain my expert opinion that it will not produce good results in terms of creating representation, for example, or even doing planning. I mean, it's when you do a dummy approach to elections, right? And you do representations, out of, like, all of a sudden it blows up. You get more representatives. I would like to have one in my county. I would like to have one in my village because I'm from Warab. But as a scientist, I have no way to justify it.
Quite interesting.
Yeah.
So we are taking another short break. Stay tuned. You don't need to miss this talk on SSBC PowerHouse with the National Bureau of Statistics. Today we are talking about data. Let's take a short break. Hello, dear viewer of SSBC. Welcome back after that short break. Like I said, you don't want to miss today's discussion on the data in this country, in South Sudan. As we all know, it is time country is gearing up for December 2024 general election. We have dwelled so much into the function of the Bureau, but you have just embarked on your journey, and as we talk now, you want to put things together in order to implement your priorities.
Right.
So what are some of the challenges you are facing currently, or you are likely to face?
You know, I'm happy to enumerate some of the challenges that underlie my task, but I would prefer talk about some of the plans that I have in order to move the Bureau forward. Obviously, we have already talked about resources, and the resources are the basis for running an institution, especially human resources. And human resources would need to eat, they would need to be transported, they would need to go have their kids go to school, they would need to have medical attention if they're sick. And so financial resources are needed. But look, all of this can be mobilized. And I'm mobilizing from the government, I'm also mobilizing from partners. And what that really entails is that I have plans that are practical, that if the resources are truly available in this places, and, with the government and with the international setting, I should be able to tap into those resources. And number one is to map what my needs are. Understanding where I need demographers, where I need statisticians, understanding where I need econometricians or economists. This is the point of departure for me, because once I know I need 2 demographers, I can go to UNFPA and tell them, you are the population-centered UN entity. Give me resources for 2 demographers, or give me 2 consultants to train the students who are at the University of Juba. The second approach that I'm using right now is to basically look at the policy environment. What do we have? What documents do we have? Do we have strategic plans? Because we must inform our programs using a strategy that is in-house and that's practical. In the next few months, I should be able to come out with a simple strategic plan which says we'll deal with A in X months, we'll deal with B in Y months, and here are the resources needed, here's where we're going to go for the resources. Again, this goes back to planning. And what I'm telling you in a nutshell is that I am putting in place a concrete plan that will generate resources.
That's good, quite good. So you have a good, very interesting plan that you are putting in place to generate your income. Like Doctor, most of the politicians that comes in, they always talk, if I'm given the budget, I'll do this, I'll do this. At the end of the day, we see them, should I say they're fired or they are suspended or whatever.
Whatever the case
But
is.
yeah, so at the end of the day, we would see someone retired or is sent back home without even implementing a single single promise. Like you now, you have 4 at hand that you want to do with immediate effect. So at some time later on, you will be like, I don't know, is it the resources they don't get, or is it that you politician, once you have secure, you forget about the promises you've made?
Let me tell you this. This country was founded on a great deal of wealth. When we came to when the agreement was signed in 2005 and we moved to Juba, or Rumbek first and we moved to Juba, we had plenty of resources. Where are they? Because some of the folks you're talking to had a bunch of resources, but didn't do much. So it's never a question of resources. Rwanda doesn't have a lot of resources. It's
So
developing. Why is Rwanda developing?
So what will differentiate you from them?
I'm not trying to be distinct from anybody. All I'm saying is that my approach to things, a lot of people probably have that as well in the
But
system,
the citizens
is that I have to have a plan, a plan that is costed, a plan that's simple, a plan somebody with interest to help me is able to understand. That plan is what guides you.
Yes,
Majority of my colleagues don't really have any plan. And perhaps maybe it's because their intention is politics. Well, I'm not a politician. I'm coming in here as a technocrat. And I built the institute where I came from. And the institute is now ranked one of the best research institutions in the region. Did that in 10 years.
All right, you are coming here to work. You're not a politician.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
On the face of SSBC,
Right.
these are the things citizens want to see, because in most cases, politicians promised, but they don't deliver it. They do the other way around. So with your plans, they're in place, but still, you are saying you have priorities, like you would seek the international, the
Right.
government.
Right.
So for the case of government, yes, they might not. It will always take time.
Right.
So what is your immediate right hand that you would be like, for me to secure this thing or to implement this with immediate effect,
Right.
I have to rely on this? Is it NGOs, the international, or is it the government?
Let me put it this way. The government has an obligation to fund the National Bureau of Statistics. And I'm in consultation with the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance has promised to provide resources that I will ask. But that also means the Bureau has potential in the international setting. It's supported, and I should say this so the viewers can see it. UNFPA, for example, and UNDP have been there supporting the Bureau. When I moved to this country, 2015, when I finished my doctorate, the Bureau had about $9 million from the World Bank to implement programs. So the Bureau is lucky. It has support from the international setting. And when we had the reception, all of this international organization came. They also met with me and said they'd be here to support me. While I will want the government to make sure that, because it's a national institution, to have resources in the basket, and they should have the resources in the basket, there's also an opportunity for us to leverage our donors to support the Bureau of Statistics.
Okay.
And I'll do the best I can to make sure the two partners, the government and the international partners, come together to support the Bureau, because it's a critical institution. Yeah.
Okay, recently the Bureau has conducted a workshop on gender statistics. So what was the outcome of that forum?
Well, the workshop was basically a technical training program to empower the government institutions on how to collect data on gender. I don't know if you're aware, in a lot of places, people will allege that there are more women in this country than there are men. I don't believe that, right? I don't believe that, because statistically that's not true. According to the Census of 2008, there are more men than women. And this justification, even for folks who are familiar with the fact, would say, yeah, there are more women than men, and that allows me to get a couple of wives and what have you.
Yes.
But the fact is that we have to understand what the numbers actually look like, where we can generate the data. And so the training that we had was to look at that perspective, generating gender-related statistics, so we understand, for example, the enrollment of our kids in school. How many boys, how many girls are enrolled, in terms of mortality, how many girls, how many boys are dying as kids, how many more generally are getting jobs, right? Good jobs, not just jobs. Because right now, statistically, as we speak, there are lots of women employed in the government, for example, but majority of them are not holding strategic positions. Majority of them are the servers, right? They are messengers. And so once you factor that into their income, women will be really low compared to men in terms of what they earn. So this was what the training was about. So we have folks who can generate accurate data.
So why focus on gender statistics?
Because that's how you create gender equality, right? So the agreement provides for 35% of women quota in the government. We want to understand how that is manifested. Is it being implemented, for example? Remember, when we generate statistics, the interest is for us to understand where we are on a policy program. Part of the Bureau's mandate is to actually monitor and evaluate policy investments by the government and partners. And so if you design a program such as gender equality program, you need to generate statistics to understand whether or not you have achieved 50% or 35%. If you haven't, then you figure out why that is. And if you are succeeding, then you can scale it up. And in this country, you know quite well that there's inequality, gender inequality, and you need to move away from it by making sure statistics are made available.
But you know, when we talk of this country, the more they talk about gender equality, or the inequality.
Right.
You know, people, when they see gender, they focus on women, leaving out the men. gender?
That's a good point. That's
Yes.
a
So
good point.
if you are saying now maybe in the government it is women who are dominating, so so with this statistic that you're going to...
I didn't say women are dominating. I said there are
No,
more
you're saying
women
there
who
are
are
more.
employed
Yeah.
in the government,
If there are
but
more
majority
there.
of them don't hold a strategic position. For example, a policy, like decision-making decision. A bunch of them are messengers, low grade.
Low grade, yes.
Right, and you don't want that. If you want equality, you should be holding the same position that I hold.
But I thought the
Right?
position come as a result of your qualification.
But then that's why it's important, right? Because I have not prepared you. You're my daughter. I will prefer my boys to go to school, get a university degree, and I'll send you to the cattle camp and marry you off at 15. That's inequality. Gender statistics will allow us to make sure that does not happen. But you made a good point, and this is a cultural issue. Gender is both men and women.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize that. But our understanding of it, I mean, the Ministry of Gender, for example, has never been led by a man.
Yeah.
You know why? Because we think that it's a ministry
And
for
all
women.
the projects they're implementing are for women.
Because
leaving
you
out
need
the
to
men.
bridge the gap. It's not that the leaders in the ministry are against men and boys. They just want to bridge the gap. So then more women come up. Because right now, if you look at literacy rates, women's level is relatively
But
low.
in that
So I wouldn't mind actually pumping more resources to bring women up at all. And this is where the gender statistics is needed.
Tell us, what is your last message to this South Sudanese audience who are here watching us live?
My last message is that please pay attention to the National Bureau of Statistics. The National Bureau of Statistics is not just about the census. It has more to do than the census. Previously, the understanding of it, and by the way, the National Bureau of Statistics lost resources previously as a result of this assumption that once the Bureau has conducted the census, then it has no other role to play. No, it doesn't work that way. Part of our task is to collect the data, but analyzing and informing the policy can take 10 years. So the National Bureau of Statistics had multiple tasks for the country. It supports development. Development does not end when the census has been conducted. Development will continue, and it has to be informed by analyzing and presenting materials from those data that have been generated. So I want our population to basically understand that the Bureau has more role than just the census.
Good. All right, thank you so much. Dear viewer of SSBC, we have come to the end of our interview with the chairperson of the National Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Augustino Ting Mayai, who was here telling us what are his plans as he just assumed the office about a week. So far, our main objective was to know if the census will be conducted before election or after. As per now, the doctor has given out so many options to the government, either to extend the election process for about 3 to 6 months, for the Bureau to conduct census, or they can still use the 2008 census. For now, we are done. Bye-bye. Don't forget to tune in to SSBC every Wednesday at 7 p.m. just to catch up with PowerHouse with Akuch Maker. Bye-bye for now.